Joining us, Tamar Jacoby, and she is the president and CEO of ImmigrationWorks USA. Welcome.
Nice to be here.
If you had to describe how this administration is approaching immigration reform, how would you describe it?
They're just getting ready to approach immigration reform. They've had quite a few other bigger issues on their plate for the first however many months it's been, 7 months. Immigration has been top of the second tier, but I think it's possible that come fall, I think it's even looking maybe likely, that come fall, immigration is going to be in the first tier.
When you earlier this week, you had an op-ed that was co-written by Jorge Castañeda that takes a look at why you describe it as a legalization-only approach won't fly. Could you give some context of what this op-ed was about?
Sure. We're talking about immigration reform. When we get back to that big issue that Bush tackled and the Senate tackled 2 or 3, 4 years ago and didn't get done. So the question is, what do we need to do? And in the broadest brushstrokes, we want to take the people who are coming illegally to the country now and have them come legally. They're coming here mostly to work. Not too many are coming now, right? Because we're not hiring too many people. But when the economy is humming, they're going to start to come again. And we think it'd be smarter if they came legally rather than illegally. Now, you can divide that up. Are you talking about the people already here? Or are you talking about the people coming in the future? And what our op-ed was about was we were saying legalizing the people already here is important. We as a country don't want a big underground population for our sake as much as theirs. But it's also really important that if we're going to need new workers in the future, which we will when the economy starts to grow, when people start to build houses again and go to restaurants and go to hotels, then we'll need future new workers, and it'd be better if they come legally too, so we don't end up with a whole new population of unlawful people.
And yet the political context of making that happen is something that hindered the last administration's approach to this. How do you change things this time?
Well, I think President Obama's leadership, for one. Latino vote has become much more of a powerful engine. In 2004, 7.5 million Latinos voted. In 2008, 11 million Latinos voted. That is a big jump. And Democratic politicians and Republican politicians, too, are paying attention and saying, what do these people need? And they don't, let's be fair and honest, they don't just, immigration isn't the only issue they care about. It's not even always the top issue. They care about the same issues we all care about, the economy and health care and what have you. But they take a signal. When a politician doesn't like immigration reform, they say, wait a minute, or many do, are you talking about me? Are you dissing me? And so for Latino voters, immigration, that's going to be a driver of getting it done in a way that I think it wasn't in the past.
Is the argument you're making also difficult because so many Americans are out of work currently that you're asking for a legalization of people who aren't defined as Americans?
Yes, of course. I mean, the recession is going to make everybody think twice about all the pieces of this. But, if you think about it, it actually would be better if those people who are now in the shadows, if they were paying their full freight in taxes, and if they could actually bargain in the workplace, that actually would be better for Americans, right? And again, certainly when the economy starts to recover, we're going to need not just them probably, but new immigrants. I mean, Americans, when they go, even people who are unemployed now, when they go back into the workforce, they don't want to go down a rung. They want to go back to the jobs they had or go up a rung. There's still going to be jobs at the bottom that when the economy starts to recover, that Americans are not going to want to do.
But does this benefit those, or does the businesses that would employ those?
Well, when you think about it, if you're a restaurant and you can stay open because you have people working in the kitchen, that's a job for probably an American-born waiter and an American-born chef, and it's more work for the Americans who are growing and trucking the food, and more work for the guy who built the restaurant. So immigrants tend to be low-level jobs that Americans don't necessarily want to do, and high-level jobs that Americans don't have the education to do, and those guys at the bottom and the top actually sustain jobs for Americans in the middle.
Specifically, then, how would you advise this administration charting forward, looking also back at the previous administration's efforts on this issue?
Well, it's the administration and it's those guys up there. It's Congress, right? So what they ought to do, and I think, it's not just me, there's a consensus on this, we need tougher enforcement. There's no question about that. Everybody's sick of a situation where the law is broken, the law is a joke. So we need tougher enforcement on the border and tougher enforcement in the workplace.
Enforcement of illegal immigration.
Well, we want to make sure that the people who come are legal. We don't want any more illegal immigration. We want to create a system where there's no illegal immigration, if possible, where everybody who comes legally. So tougher enforcement, better limits, more realistic limits. You know, if it turns out that and right now we don't need that many immigrant workers, right? But when the economy starts to grow again, if it turns out, and you know, who could predict? We want to look for Americans for the jobs first. But if it turns out Americans don't want to do some of these jobs, which I predict it will, as in the past, then we should allow immigrants to come legally. So a more realistic system, so that people don't, if you're an honest guy in Mexico and you want to come here and dig ditches and can't find any Americans to do it, you shouldn't have to sneak over the border. You should be able to go and get a visa and come.
So there should be a quota.
So there should be a realistic quota. See, that's the key thing.
What kind of number is that, though?
Well, the market should decide. Right now, we probably, you know, we already let in about 1 million immigrants a year, right? So but the problem is that enough? So the question is, do we need some more for these people who, and in the past we did, because that's why people were sneaking over the border, because there weren't actually enough visas to do the work. So realistic quotas. So enforcement, tough enforcement. So realistic laws that we then enforce like we mean it, like other laws, you know, not laws that are a joke that we don't really enforce. And then some answer for the 11, 12 million people who are already here. But the actual most important piece of those three pieces, the most important piece really, if you think about it, is the more realistic quotas going forward. Because otherwise you're just going to end up a few years down the road with a new pool of unlawful people, right?
And for those here, is a concern only because they probably wouldn't identify themselves as far as the folks already here?
No, we expect the folks already here. We're going to require them to come forward and, you know, pay a fine, probably get fingerprinted and admit that they've been here and pay back taxes and jump through a lot of hoops. I mean, we don't want to just say, it shouldn't be an amnesty, right? I don't think you want them to just say, fine, we don't care what you did in the past. We want to actually make people come forward and say, I did something wrong and I now want to make good on it. So it's those three pieces. And what our op-ed was about was saying don't leave out any of those three pieces. That if you just do one of those pieces or two of those pieces, it's actually not going to work. It's like an engine. You need all three parts for it to work properly.
Is there a component then that not only do we have to deal with it here in the United States, but the Mexican government has to cooperate?
Well, exactly. Because, I mean, how are we going to even if we just do the legalization piece, right, how are we going to know who these people really are? How are we going to process them? Mexican government's going to have to help with that. And then in the future, the Mexican government's going to have to help and make sure that people do actually go through those legal pipelines as opposed to running over the border again. So we're going to need Mexican help to do this.
As far as actual timing of legislation, has there been any indication?
You know, it's surprising even me, but Senator Schumer is working on a bill that he wants to have done in early fall. You think they have a lot on their plate. When is they going to be done with health care? But I think it's possible that they might be considering this in late fall.
Check the Washington Post archive for our guest op-ed, co-written. It's called Immigration Pitfall. You can find it at washpost.com. And our guest is also the president and CEO of ImmigrationWorks USA. Tamar Jacoby, thank you.
Thank you.